It all started in the VIP lounge of a country club in Austin. One of those glassy, too bright places where every smile feels rehearsed and every conversation starts with what car you drive or how many acres your lake house sits on. I wasn't supposed to be there. The dinner was for my wife Emma and a group of her colleagues. A networking event, she called it, casual, professional, nothing special. No spouses invited. I hadn't planned on showing up. Actually, I had every intention of staying home that night. But a buddy of mine, Dylan, who works part-time at the country club as a server, called me up a few hours before the event. He sounded weird, hesitant, like he was debating whether to say anything at all. "You free tonight?" he asked. "Sort of," I said. "Why?" "Emma's event is at the club. I think you should stop by." Just like that. No explanation. No warning. He wouldn't say more over the phone, only that he'd found something, and that I needed to see it for myself. Dylan's not the dramatic type. So when someone like that makes a call like this, you listen. I threw on a blazer, grabbed my keys, and headed over. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe he found a pair of earrings or saw Emma looking too cozy with someone she used to work with. Something dumb. Something I could laugh off on the drive home. But I think I already knew it wasn't that simple. Not really. When I got there, I came in through the side entrance Dylan told me about, the one that wraps behind the main dining room. He met me near the staff lockers, out of view. Said he only had a minute. "Here," he said, pulling something wrapped in a cloth napkin from his apron pocket. "I found this in Emma's bag." I unwrapped it slowly, half expecting to see nothing, or something random. Instead, I found my wedding ring. My ring. Not a duplicate. Not something that just looked like it. My ring, the one I lost over a month ago during a long weekend trip to San Antonio. Emma and I had stayed in this boutique hotel with creaky floors and a clawfoot tub. Romantic, if you like that sort of thing. On the last day, I noticed my ring was missing. I searched everywhere, the bathroom, under the bed, even inside my overnight bag. Nothing. Emma helped for a little while, but eventually she just shrugged and said I must have dropped it somewhere on the river walk. "These things happen," she told me. I was upset, sure, but not suspicious. Not then. Now here it was, cold in my palm, wrapped in a napkin like some kind of contraband. I just stared at it for a few seconds, turning it over between my fingers. "I wouldn't have said anything if I wasn't sure," Dylan said, his voice low. "I was helping her with her coat before guests started arriving. Her purse spilled. It rolled right out." I nodded, still processing. "You're sure it was hers?" He looked me in the eye. "I wouldn't be calling you if I wasn't." I don't remember walking toward the lounge. I think I floated. The hallway felt long and narrow, and for a moment I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I slipped inside the room quietly, keeping near the edge. No one noticed me at first. Emma was already seated. She looked perfect. A fitted navy dress, her blonde hair in one of those sleek buns that showed off the line of her neck. She always knew how to work a room, how to look just polished enough to seem untouchable. But my eyes weren't on her. Not entirely. They were on the man next to her. He was tall, older, maybe early 40s, with that effortless kind of wealth you can't fake. Tailored charcoal suit. A silver watch that cost more than my first car. His hand rested lazily on the back of her chair. But every now and then, his fingertips would drift a little lower, brushing the fabric near her waist, hovering just above her hip. She didn't flinch, didn't move away, didn't even seem to notice. But she noticed me. Our eyes met from across the room. And just like that, she smiled. Cool. Dismissive. A little too casual. She leaned in, whispered something to him, and he chuckled. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the way his eyes flicked toward me, just for a second. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't storm up or demand answers. I walked back out the way I came, down the hallway with that damn ring still in my pocket. I waited by the coat check, my pulse still too high. Eventually, Emma came out alone. She looked surprised to see me, but not panicked, just mildly inconvenienced. "You came?" she said. "I thought I told you it was just work people." I held up the napkin and unwrapped the ring, letting her see it in my hand. Want to tell me why this was in your bag? She blinked. Not a twitch of guilt. No fear. Just confusion laced with condescension. That's yours, right? She said. You lost it, remember? You said it disappeared in San Antonio, that you hadn't seen it since. Well, I didn't realize it was in my purse. I must have grabbed it by accident. Maybe it got stuck in the lining. You helped me look for it. I mean, I didn't know it was in there. There was a moment of silence. And what about him? I asked, keeping my voice even. The guy with the hand on your chair. She laughed. I swear, she actually laughed. Like I just asked if she was running off to join the circus. You're being jealous, she said. Seriously? That was Paul. He's from the Denver office. Married. 2 kids. We were talking about funding proposals. Nothing more. He looked pretty comfortable. It's a trick of the light, she said, flipping the words like a magician pulling cards. You're reading into things. Honestly, this is just weird. What are you even doing here? That's when it hit me. She wasn't defending herself. She was flipping the script, turning the moment into my fault. Now I was the jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife having male colleagues. Suddenly, I was the problem. Not the ring. Not the touch. Not the lie. I didn't respond. I just watched her. There was something in her eyes. Not anger. Not guilt. Something colder. Like she'd rehearsed this. Like she'd been preparing for this exact moment and had already decided how to spin it. The kind of calm you only get when you're not surprised to be caught. She turned away first. Slipped back inside like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just found physical proof that she was keeping secrets. I drove home in silence. Didn't even turn on the radio. I kept the ring in my cup holder, glancing at it now and then like it might suddenly start talking. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the click of the fan and trying to make sense of everything. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. Just numb. I kept thinking about the look she gave me when I asked about the ring. How fast she recovered. How smooth the deflection was. That wasn't someone caught off guard. That was someone used to lying. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, watching shadows crawl across the walls while the hours slipped past. Emma was still out when I got home. I didn't ask where she went after the dinner, and she didn't volunteer it. Around 11:40 p.m., the front door clicked open, and I listened to her heels echo on the hardwood floor. She moved through the kitchen like a ghost, humming to herself, like nothing had happened. No mention of the ring. No mention of me showing up. Not even a hello. That told me everything I needed to know. She climbed into bed while I pretended to be asleep, and I felt the mattress shift as she turned her back to me. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, steady and deep, as if guilt didn't touch her. Meanwhile, my mind was sprinting in every direction. I thought I was going crazy. But when you're lying in bed beside someone who just made you question your entire reality, your brain does this thing. It starts playing everything back. Old conversations. Little changes. Tiny inconsistencies you'd once brushed off as quirks or mood swings. And the more I thought about it, the more things started lining up in a way I couldn't ignore. First, there were the phone calls. About 2 months back, Emma started taking calls in the car. Always in the car. Sometimes she'd step outside after dinner, claiming she needed privacy for work calls. Which, fine, made sense. She's in corporate strategy, and her job can get intense. But I remember asking once, why not take it inside? She just smiled and said, the reception's better out there. That didn't even make sense. We live in a suburb with decent Wi-Fi and cell coverage. The only dead zone is behind the garage, where she always parked when taking those calls. Then there were the clothes. New dresses started appearing in the closet. Expensive ones. Too flashy for the office but not formal enough for galas. I asked her once, jokingly, if she was prepping for a modeling career. She laughed it off. You know how it is, she said. I just like feeling confident at work. She said the same thing when she started using perfume again. A new bottle, citrusy and warm. Something I hadn't smelled on her since our honeymoon. I didn't think much of it. I mean, people evolve. Styles change. But it wasn't just the perfume. Sometimes, she'd come home from her so-called walks with friends, smelling like cologne. A type I didn't own. Not strong, but there. Just enough to make me wonder if she'd hugged someone. Or maybe stood too close to someone wearing it. I told myself not to be that guy, not to be paranoid. Trust, I reminded myself. Trust her. I wish I had listened to my gut instead. Then there were the Friday nights. She used to come home right after work, drop her keys on the counter, and tell me everything that annoyed her during the day. From sloppy coworkers to passive-aggressive emails. But lately, she'd started coming home later and later. Drinks with the team, she said. Client check-ins, she claimed. Once, I asked if I could meet her downtown after one of these dinners, maybe grab dessert together. She got defensive, said it was bad form to mix personal and professional at these events. You'd be bored, she added. It's mostly PowerPoint slides and awkward handshakes. Another time, she said she had a spa night with her friend Molly. A girls' night, just the two of them. But Molly posted photos that evening, from a birthday party across town. Emma wasn't in any of them. I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe plans changed. Maybe she saw Molly earlier and then went home. I didn't want to seem controlling. I didn't want to snoop. I didn't want to believe I had a reason to. But the truth was starting to build. Not like a house of cards, but like a wall. Brick by brick. Even the way she laughed had changed. That used to be one of my favorite things about her, her real laugh. Loud. A little snorty. Unfiltered. But lately it had been different. Sharp. Controlled. Like she was mimicking someone else's idea of what laughing sounded like. I remember hearing her in the hallway one night, talking on the phone. Her voice soft, but playful. "No, you're terrible," she said, followed by that unfamiliar laugh. When I walked into the room, she hung up without saying goodbye. Said it was a telemarketer. What kind of telemarketer makes you giggle like a teenager? I let it go, because that's what you do when you love someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt. Again and again and again, until you run out of doubt to give. And now, I was empty. I sat up around 3 a.m., walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The light above the stove cast a long, pale glow across the tile. It looked sterile, cold, like the kind of kitchen in a house no one really lives in, just stages for showings. The silence pressed down on me like a weighted blanket I didn't ask for. I stood there, glass in hand, and remembered a Sunday last month when she left the house in a rush. Said she was going to the park to clear her head. She took a tote bag with her, no gym clothes, no water bottle. Just that bag. I offered to come with her. She said no. Said she needed to think. She came back 2 hours later, hair tousled, wearing a different shirt than the one she left in. Claimed she spilled coffee and had to change. I noticed a faint mark on her collarbone, like a bruise or a hickey, but didn't say anything. Told myself it was a shadow. Or maybe my eyes playing tricks. That same tote bag? That's where Dylan found the ring. I looked at my phone, tempted to call someone. My brother, maybe, or my friend Nate. But what was I supposed to say? Hey, remember how I thought I was married to someone trustworthy? Plot twist. Instead, I pulled open my notes app and started writing. Bullet points, moments, incidents. A timeline of quiet betrayals I'd talked myself out of noticing. The business trip to Dallas that got extended by a day. The unread messages I saw from a contact saved only as C. The shift in how often she touched me or didn't. Her sudden obsession with locking her phone, even when we were alone. The hotel receipt I found tucked into her jacket pocket, from a place we'd never stayed. I didn't know what I was looking for. Writing it all down. Maybe proof I wasn't crazy. Maybe permission to stop giving her chances she didn't deserve. Maybe just clarity. By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds, I had a list of 18 moments. 18 separate times I had questioned something, doubted myself, and let it go. 18 opportunities to see the truth. And I had ignored every single one. Emma stirred around 6:30. I heard the sheets rustle, then the sound of the bathroom door closing. Water running. The usual morning routine. I didn't move. I stood there in the kitchen, phone still in my hand, staring out the window like the answers might be written in the clouds. I didn't know what my next move would be. Confrontation? Surveillance? Pretend everything was normal until I had absolute proof? All I knew was this. My marriage wasn't what I thought it was. And Emma? She wasn't who I thought she was either. The thing about knowing, really knowing, is that it doesn't come as a lightning bolt. It doesn't crash down out of nowhere. It arrives slowly, like fog crawling across your front lawn. You think you can still see clearly. You convince yourself it'll pass. But eventually, the shape of everything you thought was solid begins to blur. That morning after the dinner, I didn't say anything to Emma. I didn't ask about the man in the suit. I didn't bring up the ring again. She moved around the house like it was just another Tuesday. Made coffee. Stretched in the kitchen. Even kissed me on the cheek. Like she hadn't expertly lied to my face the night before. Like I was still in the dark. I wasn't. I just wasn't ready to let her know I wasn't. But that day, I decided I needed more than a hunch. More than strange colognes and lies about phone calls. I needed something undeniable. Something I couldn't explain away or forgive out of habit. So around noon, I left work early and drove downtown. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I remembered she once mentioned a contemporary art gallery on 5th, a place where her client had hosted a mixer a few weeks back. She described it so casually, like she barely noticed the place. But when I asked a follow-up question, which gallery was it? She deflected, said it didn't matter. Just some pop-up, she told me. Not worth remembering. Only Emma remembers everything. She has a steel trap for details, restaurant names, perfume scents, even license plates. So when she brushed off something like that, I made a mental note. Now I was following that note. The gallery wasn't hard to find. Tucked between a boutique tailor and an organic juice bar, the front had one of those minimalist signs with just a name, Frame House. I parked across the street, angled low in my seat. I felt stupid, like a character in a cheap detective movie. But I wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. First, nothing. Just people walking past with tote bags and coffees, heads buried in their phones. I waited, checked the time. It was almost 2 p.m. I told myself I'd give it 30 minutes, then leave. I was probably being paranoid. Maybe she really was in the office all day. Maybe the man from the club was a client or a mentor or... Then she walked out. Emma, my wife, wearing the beige trench coat I'd gotten her for Christmas. Her hair was down, curling slightly at the ends, the way it does when she lets it air dry. And she was laughing. Beside her, arm to arm, was the man from the country club. Same tailored look. Same salt and pepper stubble. Only now I could see him more clearly in the daylight. He wasn't just older, he looked established. Confident. The kind of man who wore silence like a suit. He wasn't talking much, but Emma was glowing next to him. Laughing too freely. Her shoulders tilted toward him in that unconscious way people lean when they want more than just conversation. Then he reached for her hand, and she let him take it. Not hesitating. Not looking over her shoulder. Just accepted it. As naturally as if it were routine. As if this wasn't their first time strolling out of a gallery hand in hand on a weekday afternoon, while I sat in a parked car like a stranger outside my own marriage. I felt something shift in my chest. Not an explosion, but an unraveling. Quiet. Internal. Like stitches coming loose one by one. I didn't follow them right away. I needed to breathe. My palms were sweating, and my mouth tasted like copper. I was afraid that if I stepped out of the car, I'd do something I couldn't take back. So I waited a few minutes before slowly opening the door and walking across the street. They'd gone into a small cafe just a few buildings down. I stayed outside, ducked behind a half-dead potted plant by the window. The cafe had large panes of glass, clean and unforgiving. And there they were, seated together, just the two of them. They weren't sitting across from each other like colleagues would. No laptops, no files. Just 2 drinks and a shared pastry. She was leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes locked on his. He said something that made her smile, that smile. The private one. The one she used to give me in the early days. The one I hadn't seen in months. Then, just like that, she kissed him. No hesitation. No glance around the room. Just leaned across the table and pressed her lips to his. Not long. Not showy. But casual. Int asterisk mate. Familiar. And that's what broke me. The ease of it. The routine. It wasn't passion. It was practice. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't an affair still in its infancy. This was a relationship. A rhythm. Something she'd invested time into. I stepped back onto the sidewalk, my ears ringing. The traffic, the conversations around me, even the wind. It all blurred into white noise. I don't know how long I stood there. Eventually, I walked away. I couldn't look anymore. Couldn't stand to see her like that with someone who wasn't me. My legs felt like lead. I barely remember the drive home. What I do remember is the feeling when I pulled into our driveway. That sudden punch of realization that I was about to walk back into a life that had already fallen apart. Inside the house, everything looked the same. Our wedding photo still sat on the mantel. Her coffee mug was in the sink, lipstick stains still fresh on the rim. The couch cushions were indented from where she'd watched TV the night before. But it all felt staged now, like props in a play I didn't agree to be in. I walked upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed. Stared at the floor for what must have been an hour. No tears. No anger yet. Just numbness. Like my body was conserving energy for the storm it knew was coming. That night I didn't eat. Couldn't. Just lay awake again. Counting ceiling tiles. Listening for the sound of the garage door. Emma came home just after 10. I heard her heels click softly against the tile. The sound of her setting down her keys. The refrigerator opened and closed. She never came upstairs. I think on some level she knew. Maybe not what I knew, but that something had shifted. That the wool was off and I'd finally seen the wolf. Still, she said nothing. In the morning, we did the dance. The fake casual conversation. She asked if I needed anything from the store. I told her no. She kissed my cheek again, and I let her. I let her, knowing those same lips had been on someone else the day before. Because the war hadn't started yet. But it would. And when it did, I wanted her to be the one to light the match. She came back the next evening. But this time, the locks didn't turn for her. I sat in the living room, lights dimmed, blinds shut, heart slow and steady. Like I was waiting out a storm. The decision hadn't come quickly. But once it landed hard. Final. Like a door slamming shut in a house you never planned on leaving. Emma had left that morning the way she always did. Dressed to the nines, coffee in hand, voice breezy, kiss on the cheek. I watched her drive off from the upstairs window. Didn't wave. Didn't blink. She didn't notice. She never noticed when I stopped engaging. Never noticed that I hadn't said, "I love you," in over a week. Never noticed that I'd moved some of my clothes to the guest room. Never noticed that the man she thought she'd fooled had already seen everything. What she did notice hours later was that her key no longer worked. At exactly 6:13 p.m. I heard the rattle, a jiggle, then the pause. A long silence where, I imagine, she was blinking at the doorknob, confused, maybe trying again, maybe wondering if the lock had just jammed. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. Not angry. Not yet. I didn't move. She knocked again, this time a little louder. Still, I stayed in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor like it could answer the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. Who is this woman? Really? Mark. Her voice finally broke through the door. Are you home? The sound of it, that tone she used when she wanted something, used to make me come running. Not this time. I rose slowly, walked toward the foyer, but didn't open the door. I stood there, barely breathing, listening to her shift her weight on the porch. Something's wrong with the lock, she said, a little more forcefully. I can't get in. I waited 5 more seconds, then finally opened the door, just enough to see her face. She wasn't wearing her work blazer. Instead, she was wearing a hoodie, not hers. It was too big, a men's medium at least, faded navy blue with a university logo I didn't recognize. It smelled faintly of cologne, not mine, even from where I stood. I looked at it, then at her. Her eyes widened, as if realizing too late what she'd shown up in. "Oh, this?" she stammered. "It got chilly earlier. I borrowed it from a coworker." "It's not." "I know," I said. She froze. "Know what?" I stepped back just enough to let her look inside the entryway. Her duffel bag and purse were no longer by the bench. Her shoes gone. On the small table beside the garage door sat 3 neatly packed boxes. One with clothes, one with toiletries, and one with random essentials. I'd labeled them. She looked from the boxes to me, her mouth opening slightly, like she was trying to shape a question she didn't want to ask. "What is this?" she said, already knowing. I didn't answer, just stood in the doorway, calm, silent. Her face went through a whole series of expressions. Confusion, irritation, then something like offense. Not regret, not guilt, just disbelief that I was the one drawing the line. "Is this a joke?" she asked, voice rising. "Mark, come on. Open the door." "I'm not joking. Why are my things out here? You don't live here anymore." It hit her like a slap. Not because it was untrue, but because she hadn't expected me to say it out loud. "You're being dramatic," she snapped, trying to laugh. "What is this even about?" "You know exactly what it's about." She hesitated. "If this is about that dinner the other night, it's about the months leading up to it," I said. "It's about the phone calls in the car, the new perfume, the changed laughter, the lies about who you're with and where you go." Her mouth opened, closed again. "Mark, I saw you yesterday," I added, voice quiet but direct. "Downtown, coming out of the gallery, holding hands, laughing, kissing him." There it was, the silence that confirmed everything. She didn't deny it, didn't even try. Instead, she crossed her arms, hoodie sleeves bunched at her elbows, and looked away, toward the street, like maybe there was a way to leave the conversation entirely. "Are you kicking me out?" she asked, voice flat. "I'm asking you not to come back. You can't just, Mark. I live here." "Not anymore. I have nowhere to go tonight." "You've had places to go all month." That landed. She winced, but again, no apology, no pleading. Just that simmering frustration of someone who's used to getting the upper hand, now suddenly facing consequences. I stepped back inside. "The boxes have your essentials. The rest you can coordinate with me to pick up later." Through the garage, not the front door. "Are you serious right now?" I was serious when I said, "I do." I paused. "You weren't." And then I shut the door. She didn't knock again. She just stood there for a minute. I could hear her breathing through the wood. A soft exhale. A shift of her feet. Maybe she thought I'd open it again. Maybe she thought I'd break. But I didn't. Eventually, I heard her pick up one of the boxes, muttering under her breath. Something like, "Unbelievable." Something like, "You'll regret this." And then the garage door opened and closed, and the quiet came rushing in again. I locked the deadbolt. Then I turned off the light. That night I didn't cry, didn't throw anything, didn't scream. I sat on the couch in the silence she left behind. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel paranoid or possessive or jealous. I felt clear. Not okay. Not healed. But clear. I made myself a sandwich. Sat by the kitchen window. Watched a neighbor walk their dog. Listened to the hum of the refrigerator. I breathed like I hadn't in weeks. Full breaths, without suspicion or second guessing. And it hit me. The peace I had now wasn't something Emma could destroy. Because it wasn't something she had given me. It was something I had reclaimed. The first message came the next morning. It was short, vague, passive. "So I guess this is how it ends? Just tossed out like trash?" I stared at it for a while, standing in the kitchen with my coffee still steeping. No sorry, no ownership, just a quiet attempt to reposition herself, not as the one who lied, but as the one who'd been wronged. That was her move now. Rewrite the narrative before the dust settles. I didn't respond. I didn't even type anything. I just turned the phone over on the counter and let the silence between us stretch a little longer. By the afternoon, she had ramped it up. Another text, longer this time. I didn't expect you to handle things like this. I needed space. That's all. A little freedom to think. Instead, you locked me out without even talking to me. What was I supposed to do? There it was, the reframing. Space instead of secrecy. Freedom instead of infidelity. Thinking instead of hand-holding and stolen kisses across cafe tables. It was strange how quickly she moved from caught to cornered to claiming victimhood. The speed of it would have been impressive if it wasn't so familiar. I'd seen her do it before, in fights with coworkers, with her sister, even with friends who dared to challenge her version of events. The truth was never a fixed thing for Emma. It was clay, malleable, shapeable. All she needed was time, a little distance, and a sympathetic audience. This time, she was using that audience to her advantage. Because not 24 hours later, Molly showed up at my door. She knocked like someone who didn't want to be there. Soft, apologetic, almost uncertain. I opened it, surprised to see her, holding a small canvas tote and an expression that looked more uncomfortable than angry. "Hey," she said. "You got a second?" I stepped onto the porch but didn't invite her in. She looked down at the bag in her hand. Emma asked me to bring over a few more things she forgot. You said she could get the rest later, but she's not really in a great place right now." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware." Molly hesitated. Then, quieter. "She told me you kicked her out." "I changed the locks," I said flatly, "after catching her with another man." "She didn't mention that," Molly mumbled, staring at a crack in the porch wood. "Of course she didn't." She nodded slowly, chewing on the inside of her cheek. "She said you've been really jealous lately, controlling, that you accused her of things that weren't true." "Then I guess I must have hallucinated the kiss I saw with my own eyes," I said, "at a cafe, downtown, after a trip to an art gallery she told me never happened." That shut her up for a second. I folded my arms. "You want to know what's really happening, Molly? She didn't just get caught cheating. She's trying to erase the cheating and replace it with a story where I'm the unstable one, the villain, because it's easier than admitting she burned her own life down." Molly looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw something shift in her expression. Doubt, maybe even guilt. "I figured there was more to it," she said softly. "She's been telling people that she's been unhappy for a long time, that she felt trapped, that you didn't listen anymore." I didn't know what to believe. I shook my head. She started rewriting the story before I even closed the door. Silence fell between us. Molly sighed. "I'm not picking sides. I've known you both a long time. I don't want to get caught in the middle." "You're not," I said. "You're just delivering a bag." She handed it over, and for a second I thought she might say something else, an apology maybe, or some half-hearted defense of Emma's behavior. But instead, she just turned and walked back to her car, her posture a little heavier than before. Inside the bag were a few folded sweaters, a bottle of shampoo, and her laptop charger. Things Emma could have lived without. But I knew she wasn't after the items. She wanted to send a message, that she still had access, that the separation was just a pause, a cooling-off period, not a full collapse. She was wrong. Later that night, more messages trickled in. Some from mutual friends. Some from people I hadn't talked to in months. "Hey man, just checking in. Emma said you two are going through a rough patch? Didn't realize you guys were separated. Hope you're okay." She seemed really upset. "If you need anything, we're here. Also, not taking sides, just saying." The phrase kept popping up over and over. Not taking sides. But every time someone said it, I realized they already had. Because Emma had been busy painting a version of the truth where she was the protagonist. Misunderstood, mistreated, unloved. And me, the obstacle, the controlling husband, the guy who threw her out because she wanted space. She never told them about the man. Never mentioned the hand-holding or the hoodie or the lie about the gallery. She only told them what she needed to keep herself from being the villain. I didn't respond to any of the messages. Not right away. I wasn't going to justify myself to people who'd already made up their minds. I wasn't going to defend myself from stories I hadn't written. But I also wasn't going to stay quiet forever. So a few days later, when a mutual friend, Ben, asked to grab coffee, I agreed. Ben was one of the few who hadn't reached out right away. He wasn't the gossip type, which made me trust him more than most. We met at a quiet cafe near the park, and after some small talk, he finally leaned back and said, "So, Emma's been saying things. Thought it might be good to hear your side." I nodded. "She's rewriting the story. She said you locked her out." "I did, after she lied. For months." Ben gave me a look, not skeptical but curious. "Lied about what?" So I told him. About the gallery, the man, the kiss, the months of red flags I'd ignored. The moment I found my own wedding ring in her bag, the one she swore was lost forever. I didn't get dramatic, didn't exaggerate. I just laid it all out, piece by piece, like evidence in a case I never wanted to file. When I finished, Ben leaned forward and exhaled slowly. "Damn. Yeah," I said. "She made it sound like you just broke down, like you couldn't handle her being independent." "She's always been independent," I replied. "But she stopped being honest. There's a difference." He nodded. "I'll be honest, I didn't know what to believe, but hearing it now, it makes sense. The way she's been talking, it's like she's trying to get ahead of something." "She is," I said. "She's trying to shape the fall before anyone sees the wreckage." Ben didn't say much after that. Just gave me a long look, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. And that was enough. It wasn't about turning people against her. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking the narrative back. That night, I got one last text from Emma. "I don't know how you're telling the story, but you're making me look like a monster. That's not fair." I didn't answer, because the truth doesn't need to raise its voice, and people who are guilty often hear it loudest of all. At the lawyer meeting, Emma walked in like a victim, confident, composed, until my attorney laid out photos, receipts, and texts. Her face dropped. Silence. Then, days later, I got a message from him, Chris. Said he didn't know she was married. Said she lied to him too. Claimed we were already separated. He ended it. Said she twisted the truth with both of us. That letter? It was the final proof I hadn't imagined any of it. Weeks passed. Then she showed up, alone, hollow-eyed, desperate. "I lost everything," she whispered. But even then, there was no regret. Only fear. No apology. No clarity. Just a woman terrified of being left behind. I said nothing, just turned away. At home, I framed a note I found among her things. "One day you'll say thank you." I didn't say it aloud, but she was right. That betrayal? It was the beginning of my real life.